In the near future, a new illness called ARDS spreads all over the world and causes society to collapse. At first an infected person will just have normal symptoms like fever, but soon they'll lose their sanity and only talk rubbish. This is why they're known as talkers. The disease is transmitted through speech, so anyone going outside must wear special headphones. All these new laws are reinforced by the Anti-Epidemic Institution or AEI, who puts infected people in quarantine zones. There's been riots everywhere against this organization because they're seen as taking advantage of the situation. In Istanbul, there's a curfew of 6 p.m. inside the safe zones. Linguist Murat is immune to the disease because he has synesthesia, meaning he sees hallucinations while hearing sounds. Hearing the talkers gives him severe headaches that raise the temperature in his skull for a few seconds. He keeps track of his condition by listening to recordings and checking on his temperature. All this process is recorded in a bunch of cassettes. One day, Murat sees Sule reading at the bus stop without headphones. He imagines how it'd be to approach her, but he doesn't dare and walks away when Sule looks up. Afterward he ignores the AEI signs and sneaks past a guard to stay with his mother Emel, who asks him to go shopping. Since Murat just got here he's supposed to stay inside for a few days, but Emel makes him go anyway. On his way out, Murat completes Emel's Sudoku puzzle in seconds just to annoy her in return. On the way to the store, Murat finds the bus stop empty but discovers Sule left a letter for him that makes him smile. While waiting in line at the store, a talker appears and begins talking nonsense, causing everyone to panic. All the clients run out while an employee brings down a gate that leaves Murat and a kid with no headphones trapped with the talker. Murat feels bad for the child so he gives him his own headphones and tries to save him. The talker keeps speaking to him while he struggles with the door, giving Murat a severe headache. After lifting the gate enough for the kid to return to his family, Murat grabs some frozen goods and escapes through the back door. He stops at an alley and puts the frozen food on his head to bring down the temperature while hearing the police sirens nearby. Murat rushes home to calm himself down but he keeps seeing hallucinations of his old friend Özgür, so Emel reminds him of the medicine he was given a few years ago. At AEI headquarters, Chief Officer Anton is informed of the incident at the store and how Murat was seen on the security cameras. He makes his agents investigate him and learns that Murat has been to the hospital many times because of his headaches. He also hears about something called Project X. Seeing that the cameras prove Murat has a high fever but he isn't a talker, Anton announces they must capture him to study his possible immunity. Soon an agent recovers Murat's headphones from the child and when they check the number on the computer, they're shocked to see Murat registered as an employee of the AEI. Murat goes to see Fazil, the head of this AEI branch, to tell him that Murat and Özgür may still be around, but Fazil assures him that all the employees who used to be part of Project X are dead so the camera must have given them a false match. The next day, Murat's neighbor Arif asks him to find Özgür because they need someone who can help his sick grandfather. Murat tries to explain that Özgür is dead, but Arif doesn't believe it because he heard from a rebel group called Plus One that Özgür is alive and hiding. To convince him, Arif shows Murat a picture of Özgür's tattoo, pointing out that it matches the symbols on the mysterious medicine. The next day Anton leaves a letter at the bus stop for Sule before meeting with Arif, who introduces him to Erol. He's capable of getting them into the AEI and giving them a system code to look for Özgür's profile if they pay him enough. Moments later Murat is at the AEI headquarters and the code he was given works well at the gate. A contact inside the organization opens the door for him and takes him to the admin room. Murat gains access to all the files, which say Özgür is dead. However, something strange about the pictures of the body indicates that it may be a lie. Then he tries to delete the footage of the store incident, but when he tries using his password the computer rejects it and Murat is forced to run away. When he walks by the bus station, the letter is still there. Meanwhile Anton and his team search Murat's home. Emel pretends she knows nothing and hangs a red air freshener on the window as a warning. When Murat comes back from headquarters, he sees the signal and immediately runs away. Anton sees him and sends his agents after him. However, Murat takes a bunch of hidden corridors in the building until he loses his pursuers. Sometime later Anton secretly enters the restricted zone, which is full of talkers. He ignores them all to visit a particular house where his assistant is waiting. She thinks it's time for him to learn to let go. At the same time Murat walks to another neighborhood, where the Plus One rebels bring down a wall with a huge explosion. Thankfully he doesn't get hurt and keeps going until he reaches a tattoo parlor, where he finds Özgür's tattoo design. Suddenly the artist jumps on him and threatens to kill him with a tattoo needle, but he lets go when Murat says he's a friend of Özgür's. Murat shows him the medicine and the artist confirms that's his design, but he doesn't know how it got there. He only knows that the mysterious medicine comes from the 6th zone. That evening Anton listens to the tapes he found in Emel's apartment and confirms that Anton is immune to ARDS. The next day Anton is summoned by Fazil, who wants Anton to stop investigating Murat or he'll fire him. Anton pretends he's done and that he didn't find anything at Emel's. Later Anton tries to access Murat's files, but he discovers they're classified. Meanwhile Murat leaves a coded message for Emel. When she sees it, she decodes it using her hidden notebook and sneaks out of her apartment to reunite with Murat at Arif's place. He asks her for an old family heirloom, which later he exchanges for a fake ID to access the 6th zone. Errol gives Murat a haircut before taking a few pictures for the ID. Once it's done, they get ready to leave only to discover the AEI are outside because Anton is ignoring his boss's orders. The duo runs away while Anton and his men come inside to search the building. They follow a strange noise and open a locker door, where they find a hair clipper. This distraction gives Murat enough time to escape. The next day Anton returns to the restricted zone with a birthday cake. It turns out his wife and his son are talkers and he's keeping them hidden until the AEI finds a cure, which explains why he's willing to risk his job to get Murat. At the entrance of the 6th zone, Murat finds wanted posters with his face. The fake ID works but he still gets nervous and considers leaving. At that moment Sule shows up and kisses him, pretending he's her boyfriend to help him hide his face. They successfully cross the gate and Murat is shocked to see this part of the city is in a very poor state. Sule takes him to her hideout, where she explains she didn't help him out of kindness. She's part of +1 and the organization is looking for someone with immunity to help the world. Murat doesn't want to get involved and tries running away, so Sule runs to mingle among talkers and removes her headphones to prove a point. A panicking Murat drags her away and Sule reveals she's actually wearing earplugs. She lets Murat go for now, but first she writes some instructions on his arm so he can find her again if he changes his mind. At AEI, Fazil is informed that Anton is still after Project X, so he bribes Agent Haidar to investigate this without his superiors knowing. Meanwhile Anton visits his family again, not noticing he's being followed. His son has an injury and is bleeding quite badly, so Anton has to struggle with his wife to keep her back while he takes care of the boy. Then he goes to the sink to wash his hands and finally notices someone watching him through the window. Anton takes his gun and runs outside, but the person is gone. It was Fazil's assistant Kanan, who is already reporting the address. When Anton returns to work, his right-hand man tells him that Kanan has been asking lots of questions about him, which makes Anton suspicious. In the 6th zone, Murat goes back to his old apartment, where he remembers the happy days he used to have with his wife. When he falls asleep, he dreams his bleeding wife is in the apartment too. The next morning Murat is leaving the building when he's jumped on by a group of men, who capture him and take him to the +1 headquarters. They hold him down for an interrogation, thinking he's a spy sent by the AEI. Thankfully Sule runs into the room right before they hurt him and explains Murat is her friend. She also encourages him to show them the medicine he has so they can help him find Oscar. Afterward Sule admits she did read the letter from the bus stop and invites Murat to come to the recording of a radio interview, during which she shares her story. She joined +1 years ago because she believes the talkers are still human and the AEI does more damage to the world than the virus. After the interview, Sule and Murat take a walk together. When they come across a group of talkers, Murat makes Sule put her hand on his forehead so she can feel the temperature in his head rising as he hears the infected people's nonsense. That night Murat sleeps at the +1 headquarters. In the morning the organization's research team asks Murat for his help, revealing they've acquired a level 6 talker as a test subject. Murat starts considering helping them, but only if Sule helps him find Oscar. Soon a rebel comes with news: the medicine is being distributed from a hotel in the mob district. Sule and Murat immediately head to the hotel, where a gangster is recording a song. The receptionist tries to kick the duo out and an argument ensues, so the gangster fires his gun to make them stop. The receptionist gets shot in the leg, but before Murat can get hurt too, he explains he knows where to get more tape for the recorder. The gangster lets him live in exchange for the seller's address. At that moment Yasemin arrives with a medicine delivery and the gangster pays her generously for it. The medicine is made by someone named Lazarus and Yasemin is his dealer, so Murat and Sule follow her out. Unfortunately she's already in her car and after taking some of the medicine, she drives away. Afterward Murat agrees to stay in one of the +1 apartments. They give him a special machine used to test brain functionality and he completes the test in a second, which a human never did before. In the afternoon Murat and Sule go to the market and find Yasemin, who calls Murat Hot Skull. This confirms Lazarus is Oscar since that was his nickname for Murat. Yasemin licks Murat's ear for fun before throwing a bunch of riddles and math problems at him, which Murat solves immediately. As a reward, Yasemin gives him a phone so she can contact him later. In the meantime Kanan returns to Anton's old home and steals some of his research plus some of Murat's tapes. Suddenly she hears a noise and goes to investigate, only to find the room with the talkers. At that moment Anton appears behind her and takes her gun before dragging her away. As Kanan promises she'll keep the secret and that Fazil only wants to help, Anton remembers all the raids he's been part of and the way his team had to split families because of orders. Civilians never received them well and would always throw things at the agents in fury. Anton shows Kanan that Fazil has been hiding parts of the AEI's research, like the fact ARDS can affect children as well. Because of this, his family didn't give their son headphones and he got infected, then his wife got ARDS from him. A furious Anton tells Kanan to get on her knees as he aims his gun, but he can't do it and lets her go. Kanan reports to Fazil and gives him the stolen evidence, however she doesn't mention Anton's family. After work, Anton approaches Kanan saying he has a new tape, but when she listens to it she discovers it's nonsense from the talkers. Anton holds her until she's infected, and after taking any evidence from her pockets, he abandons her in the parking lot. At the +1 headquarters, Murat discovers Arif has officially joined the rebels. An argument is happening because some leaders think they need to get more violent to fight the AEI, but Sule points out that will make their reputation worse when they actually need to gain people's support. Then Anton gets a call from Yasemin, who gives him an address where he can meet Özgür. Sule and Murat immediately head to the address, and Yasemin calls again to tell them to solve the very hard math problem she left on a table. Once again Murat solves it in seconds, and Yasemin makes him open a safe. He guesses the password, thanks to knowing Özgür well, and finds another riddle. This one takes Murat longer to crack, and while working on it he tells Sule that he only became a mathematical genius after he received Özgür's treatment. When Murat finally solves the riddle, the duo rushes to the harbor, where they find the ferry Murat and Özgür used to take. They go inside, and Yasemin calls one last time to inform them someone will pick them up. Soon a man appears and makes them undress to check for bugs. Once they're clear, he puts bags on their heads and Sule is dragged away. Murat is taken to a shady neighborhood, where people place bets on a dangerous game where normal civilians must escape from a labyrinth before they're infected by talkers. Yasemin shows up and tells Murat he must choose between following her to find Özgür or saving Sule, who has been thrown into the labyrinth. Murat immediately jumps in and dodges all the talkers as he runs, quickly finding the exit, thanks to his genius brain. However, he goes back and follows some bloodstains to try to find Sule. The public is allowed to poke at the players to make the game harder, and Murat is hit, causing him to fall and lose his headphones. He tries covering his ears, but more talkers are released into the labyrinth, and their chatter makes his skull temperature go so high that he passes out. At that moment Murat is found by Sule and Özgür, who is very amused by his old friend's choices. When Murat wakes up in his friend's secret apartment, he punches Özgür and starts kicking him, but Özgür only laughs. Yasemin stops Murat and explains that Özgür took a new medicine that makes pain feel like pleasure. Sule announces she must go back to +1, and they give her a phone to stay in contact before covering her head with a bag again to drop her back in her neighborhood. When she returns to headquarters, she notices Arif and other rebels exchange notes in secret. She manages to steal one and discovers a coded message. Meanwhile Fazil sends Haydar to the address Kanan gave him, and Haydar returns with Anton's family in a truck. Back to Özgür, he says Murat is his biggest accomplishment, but Murat sees his condition as a curse and wants to be normal again. Nowadays Özgür lives a life of hedonism and only agrees to help Murat after having some fun. After Özgür shows off his lab, they both take some medicine and play basketball. Soon Murat starts hallucinating having roots instead of hands before seeing his mom and his wife with the infection. Murat breaks down and Özgür has to help him calm down. Afterward the friends share an honest conversation. Murat tells the story of how his wife self-deleted, and in return Özgür explains he couldn't contact him all these years because of Fazil. Back then Özgür had been a scientist working for the AEI and was forced to sign a fake report saying that talkers were conspiring to bring down the government. This report was used as an excuse to kill thousands of infected people. While the AEI changed hands, Özgür kept working on a cure in secret by exposing patient X to a high-level talker, but eventually Fazil learned about it. As the new branch leader, Fazil announced they wouldn't send talkers to rehab anymore and fired Özgür. They argued about the cure and Özgür tried attacking Fazil to keep him away from his research, but Fazil easily knocked him out and started a fire to get rid of all the evidence. Özgür woke up just in time to escape from the fire, but first he put his badge on a burnt assistant's body so the AEI would think he was dead. Murat is the infamous patient X, and even after hearing the story, he insists he wants to be cured. Özgür agrees to help, but first he announces they must have one last night of fun. In the meantime Anton goes around the 6th zone asking if anyone saw Murat, so he's told about the hotel. Anton heads there and interrupts the recording, causing all the gangsters to take out their weapons. At that moment the AEI arrives and arrests Anton, but they leave the gangster because he has a deal with them. Later at AEI headquarters Fazil tells Anton that he is his family, so if he wants to see them again, he must find Murat and bring him to Fazil. Anton is released, and when he gets in his car he finds Haydar, so he points his gun at him. However, Haydar explains they must work together under Fazil's orders, and if Anton tries to hurt him, his family will die. They return to Emel's house, and while a team searches the apartment, Anton helps her keep her notebook with all her codes hidden. He whispers to her that he wants to help Murat before these men find him. The AEI decides to arrest her, and before leaving, she says a few words in code for Anton. In the evening, Özgür and Yasemin take Murat to a club where Sule is waiting, but both she and Murat behave too awkwardly. Yasemin spikes their drinks and the duo ends up kissing on the dance floor. The next morning, they're shocked to wake up in bed with Yasemin. During breakfast Özgür tells Murat that he needs special equipment to study his brain, which he doesn't have. Sule tells them that +1's research team does have those machines, yet Özgür doesn't want to get involved with them. Murat gets angry because Özgür isn't capable of compromising and leaves. Later Sule shows Murat the coded note she took from Arif and he finds the solution, which points to a page in a specific book. At that moment he gets a call from Özgür, who finally agrees to go to the clinic as long as they do it in secret. The AEI is currently searching the 6th zone, so Anton hangs a red air freshener to warn Murat, who hides right before Haidar can find him. Oscar shows up in his car and takes the duo away safely. Soon they arrive at the clinic where a doctor is studying talkers while still treating them as humans. While the doctor and Oscar put Murat through dozens of tests, Sule finally realizes Murat wants to be normal without lending his brain to make a cure first and thinks he's being selfish. When a truck with more talker test subjects arrives, the group is shocked to see all of them are quiet. This is because of Haluk, a 6th level talker. He was one of the first infected people, but nowadays he stays silent. Afterward, Sule and Murat argue over what to do since Sule insists Murat should help humanity first. Murat then reveals that Haluk had been the talker who infected him. That's why Oscar could use him as a test subject. Unfortunately, Murat infected his wife in the process, and that's why she self-deleted. He doesn't want to lose another loved one, and getting involved in more experiments is dangerous, but Sule still thinks humanity is more important. At AEI, ML refuses to say anything. Fazil gives her 24 hours to talk or he'll use force to make her confess. Refusing to give up, Anton retrieves ML's code notebook to get an address. He tells Haidar that Murat has been seen at a certain building, and while the agents search the apartments, he enters Arif's home to make a deal. Arif agrees to help him find Murat, but in exchange Anton must get him some information about the AEI agents. Afterward, Anton tells Haidar that Arif's apartment is empty. Later that day, Arif receives the information he wanted with an envelope for Murat. In the 6th zones, Murat is horrified to discover wanted posters with ML's face. He goes to see Sule to ask for help, and she tells him he mustn't surrender because the AEI will keep ML anyway since she'll be seen as a traitor. At that moment, Arif arrives with the envelope, which contains a green air freshener and a letter from Anton asking for a meeting. That night, Arif uses the information Anton sent him to find 2 agents that attacked a young civilian. His team starts beating the agents up, and Arif becomes horrified when the violence escalates into brutality, but his protests are ignored. Meanwhile, Sule searches a bunch of different books until she finds the one described by the coded note. Decoding it reveals a message about a plan called Hawk Wing. Then she goes to the clinic, where she watches the doctors study Haluk's brain waves while he stands among talkers. She tells the doctors that they need to stop the Hawkwing plan before more violence happens. At home, Murat can't stop seeing Haluk everywhere and even dreams about him in a forest, feeling like he's calling him. He decides to go to the clinic and convinces the doctor to let him see Haluk, who is being kept in a special cage. Murat takes off his headphones and sits next to the cage while Haluk smiles at him. Now he can finally sleep in peace. The next morning, Murat sends a message to Anton to arrange the meeting. Anton is being followed by Haidar, so he sends a few kids to distract him while a friend parks a boat next to his car. Now Haidar is trapped for a few hours while Anton sneaks away. Before going to the meeting, Murat visits Sule to apologize for his attitude. In return, Sule tells him about Hawk Wing, a plan to launch a full frontal attack on the AEI. She comes along to the meeting, during which Anton apologizes for accidentally getting Anton in trouble. He never wanted to capture him, he only wanted a cure for his family, and he had thought Fazil wanted the same thing, but obviously that's not the case. Murat thinks Anton may exchange him for his family, so he agrees to cooperate only if they follow his own plan. Afterward, Murat steals a bunch of chemicals from Oscar's lab. In the afternoon, Murat shows up at the AEI and hands himself in. He's taken to the interrogation room, where he asks for a glass of water. Murat dips a handkerchief and covers his mouth before sleeping gas comes into the room through the vents, knocking the agents out. Errol is waiting in the corridor with a special suit and masks, which they use to save ML. On their way out, Haidar recovers and tries to shoot them, only to be tackled down by Anton. Since everyone in the building is sleeping, the group just walks out through the front door and escapes in Errol's van. During the ride, Anton pays him with lots of medicine and Errol gives him back the family heirloom. Later, Haidar and Fazil arrest Anton. They're ready to punish him, but they're interrupted by a call from Murat, who says he's willing to share information about an incoming rebel attack, but only with Anton. The next day, Oscar comes to yell at Anton for stealing from him and making deals with the AEI, which puts everyone in danger. If Murat wants Oscar's help, he needs to pick a side soon. At the AEI, Fazil's superiors are furious with him for the incident and they demand results fast or he'll be replaced. Anton is kept in a cell and visited by his right-hand man, who brings him a letter from Murat. A message is sent back, but Murat doesn't share the contents with anyone. Meanwhile, Sule says on the radio that she'll march peacefully to the monument dedicated to all the killed talkers, asking people to join her. Then Sule drags Murat into the office to find the next message, which Murat immediately memorizes. They're caught red-handed by the rebels, who destroy the message and ignore Sule's concerns about the attack. After they leave, Murat decodes the note from memory and discovers the rebels will release the clinic's test talkers during the opening of another AEI lab. Murat calls Fazil and tells him to send Anton for the information. Fazil is unsure of trusting him, so he tells Anton to kill Murat after getting the information or his family will be killed instead. Then he orders Haidar to follow Anton and shoot if necessary. Hours later, Anton meets with Murat on the ferry and tells him about his orders, pointing out they're being watched. Murat gets on his knees to play along before pressing a button that makes the whole ferry shake, causing all the agents to fall. When Haidar recovers, he notices Murat and Anton are gone. He goes looking for them, but they're already on the harbor and the ferry is being pulled by a boat. Haidar is suddenly blocked by Errol and punched by Anton's right-hand man, who has brought a team to capture all the agents. It turns out Anton's family has been safe all along because Haidar captured the wrong talkers. Afterward, Murat calls Fazil to tell him Anton ran away and all the other agents are drifting through the sea. He'll give Fazil the information he wants if he agrees to follow his plan. After hanging up, Fazil goes to check on Anton's family and finally realizes he was tricked. Meanwhile, Anton finally visits his family again, who are hiding with his assistant. During a meeting with his superiors, Fazil asks them to let the people from the 6th zone have their rally because if the rebels act first, then the AEI will be seen as acting in self-defense. He gets approval and this is announced on TV, so the rebels think it's a trap. Sule asks them to cancel the attack and march peacefully, so the leader agrees as long as the AEI doesn't act first. That night Murat gives Sule a flower as a symbol of hope, then he goes to sleep next to Haluk's cage again. In the morning, Murat is shocked to see Haluk repeat the flower gesture he did with Sule, but Haluk acts normally when the doctor comes in. Soon the AEI is guarding every street, but they don't react when Sule and some rebels start to march. On every corner more residents join the group until every inch of the streets is crowded with peaceful protesters. Eventually they reach the monument where they hang the headphones of their lost loved ones. Suddenly the agents start pushing the crowd, beating them to make them go faster. Thankfully the crowd stays calm and they avoid a confrontation, but Sule accidentally drops the roses an old lady grew for her dead son. In a moment of true unity, the group works together to find the roses and pass them to the front until they go back to Sule. Now the roses can be planted under the monument as a symbol of hope. Afterward the rebel leader says they're canceling the attack since it all went well, but Murat doesn't trust her and calls Fazil to give him the details anyway. At the same time the leader calls her men and tells them to cancel the attack, however she's ignored and they get ready to leave. Arif is with them, so the leader rushes to tell Murat and Sule. At the lab opening, the rebel van is blocked by AEI agents, who immediately arrest the group and take them to an abandoned building. The agents threaten to kill the rebels, only to then reveal they're actually Anton and his men working for Murat. After the ceremony is over, Haidar tells Fazil that it wasn't his agents who arrested the rebels. Fazil is handing the leadership of the branch to another man who is very interested in Project X, so he has a plan in mind. At +1, Murat and Sule are about to get dirty when suddenly they see a huge explosion in the distance. It turns out Fazil prepared an attack anyway, this way he's killed his competition and made the rebels look like murderers in the media. After such tragedy his superiors give him back the leadership of this branch. Murat meets with Anton to arrange the protection of their families and Anton tells him he needs to fight. Then Murat visits Oscar and shares the connection he has with Haluk, so he demands to know what the treatment was like. Oscar explains he actually doesn't know because he tried his experiment with other people and it didn't work, it's the specific combination of Murat and Haluk that made Murat immune for some reason. Afterward Murat goes to the clinic and tells the doctor about his dreams. The doctor shows him a picture revealing that Haluk was found near a forest like the one Murat dreamed about. Feeling confused and upset, Murat goes to Sule's apartment and they spend the night together. The following day Fazil sends an army of agents to surround Istanbul and search for the rebels. They destroy the flowers at the monument and put a stricter curfew in place. Murat and Arif tell their families to leave for another city where Anton has a contact to protect them. Soon chaos takes over the streets as the agents raid every building and arrest any person who looks even slightly suspicious. At the Point 1 headquarters, the rebels discuss what to do. Some of them want to fight back, but the others point out it's probably a trap. Suddenly the agents burst into the room and everyone has to run away. Several rebels are captured but Sule, Anton, and Arif manage to get out. They run through the streets while the fights continue in every corner and the agents keep shooting gas. The trio immediately hides but an agent still comes after them, so Arif runs as a distraction. The agent quickly shoots him down and Murat tackles him to take the gun, firing some warning shots until the agent runs away. A neighbor then appears and offers his van to help them get Arif to a safe place. In the meantime Yasemin brings Oscar some worrisome news. Fazil visited the gangster and asked for his help to capture Murat. At that moment Sule and Murat arrive with Arif, so Oscar lets them in only to take care of the wound. Then Murat calls Anton for help, so the families will have to wait a bit longer before evacuating. Anton shows up in an ambulance and Arif is taken to the clinic, where the doctor operates on him. Arif's condition is still critical, so they can only wait to see if he recovers. ML and Arif's parents are also brought to the clinic so they can stay protected for now. A few hours later Murat is sitting next to Haluk, who suddenly shows a sad face. At that moment, Arif says a final goodbye and dies. Desperate for answers, Murat enters the cage and yells at Haluk, asking him to say something. Haluk stays silent, so Murat walks away and has a breakdown in the corridor. Then he tells all the people in the clinic that he's done hiding and wants to fight, gaining their support. They bury Arif and agree they must lay low until they find an opportunity to strike, so they'll leave the city for now. Murat sends Özgür a text inviting him to escape with them, but Özgür is scared and doesn't reply. Meanwhile, Haydar and Fazil find a survivor at the Point 1 headquarters and force him to talk. Now they know they must go into the 6th zone. At the clinic, Murat announces he wants to bring Haluk with them because he's their only chance to find a cure. By the time the agents arrive to search the clinic, everyone is gone and the cage is empty. Unfortunately, the agents find the ambulance outside. When they open the back doors, Murat removes the gag from Haluk, who only needs one sentence to transform the agents into talkers even though they're wearing headphones. Anton uses the distraction to quickly fight the other agents and bring them down, opening the way to get back in the ambulance and escape. Once they're safe on the road, Murat decides not to put the gag back and even removes his headphones. He calls Özgür to invite him again, but Özgür says Murat chose the wrong side and refuses to join him. While Fazil and his men search Sule's house, the gangster arrives with information. Now the agents are sent to block the harbor, where Errol sees them and calls Murat to arrange the meeting on another pier. Luckily, the group finds another route to get to that pier and meets with Errol, who informs them ML and Arif's family made it safely to the other city. Soon a seaplane arrives to pick them up and Fazil moves his men as soon as he sees it in the sky. The pilot lands the seaplane on the water and shares what he knows. Apparently the AEI is transferring the talkers to a new area, and the people in the 4th zone are getting moved to the 5th. That's where Anton's family is, so he leaves to go help them. The group rushes to get on the plane as Fazil's men arrive to chase them in boats. After a few minutes of tension, the plane manages to take off and the group escapes without issues. In the 4th zone, agents fight against civilians to force them to evacuate, but Anton manages to rescue his family just in time. Meanwhile, the radio host reminds everyone that the rebels were framed and plays a message from Murat, who promises to find a cure and share it with everyone. Later in the plane, Sule is asleep, so Murat picks up her ringing phone, noticing 20 missed calls. When he takes the latest call, he's shocked to hear Fazil's voice. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.